All right, Masechet Eruvin, Daf Ayin Zayin. We start with the Mishnah. We're dealing with various cases of two courtyards that are adjacent, and there's a wall in between. And so, if it's a regular thick big wall, then the two courtyards are separate, and they have to each make their own eruv. They cannot combine. But if there's an opening in the wall, then they can combine into one by putting all the bread in one of the courtyards. And so now we're dealing with questions of what is considered an opening and what is not, and what about the wall itself? What is the status of the wall, the top of the wall? Walls were very useful in those days. So what is the status? It'll depend on how thick it is. That's where we start off in the Mishnah. Kotel sheben shete haserot. גבוה 10 ורוחב 4 מערבין 2 ואין מערבין 1. So like we saw in the previous Mishnah, if the wall is 10 tefachim high, and now we're adding that it's 4 tefachim wide, right? The top of the wall. Then it's treated as 2 and not 1. Truth is, even if it's a thinner wall, it would still be 2 separate courtyards because there's no windows, right? There's no openings. But the reason why we say it's thicker here is for this case. Hayu berosho perot elu olin mikan ve'ochelin ve'elu olin mikan ve'ochelin bilbad shelo yoridu lematan. So if there is a plate of fruit on top of the wall, they left it was there before Shabbat, let's say, before Shabbat started. So the thickness of the wall, what is the status? So if the thickness of the wall is 4 tefachim, then 4 tefachim, anything that's 4 by 4 and 10 tefachim high, becomes its own domain, its own reshut, it's a reshut hayachid. Just like if you went in the middle of the street and you made a platform that was 10 high and 4 by 4 wide, then that would be a reshut hayachid, and transferring from there to the reshut hayachid or back would be a problem. So therefore, this wall becomes its own domain, and one may not move anything from his own courtyard to the wall or from the wall to the courtyard. Therefore, the Mishnah says, if a person wants, they can climb up and they can eat some fruit right up here on top of the wall. They can sit on top of the wall and eat, and they're in the same domain as the wall, but they may not bring fruit and put it there or take fruit and bring it down. Okay, so the wall is not only a separation, but also, in this case, becomes its own domain. נפרצה הכותל עד 10 אמות מערבין שניים, ואם רצו מערבין אחד, מפני שהוא כפתח. יותר מכאן, מערבין אחד, ואין מערבין שניים. So if the wall got a breach in it, if it's up to 10 amot, as follows. The wall has a breach. If the breach is less than 10 amot, then it's an opening. It's considered, the wall is still a wall, and every wall is allowed to have an opening, even though there's no doorway. That's fine. And so then you have a choice. Because there is some wall, but it's less than 10 amot, you can consider it to be 2 courtyards and make 2 separate eruvin, or you could consider it all 1 courtyard and make 1 eruv. Certainly making 1 eruv would be better, because then you can carry between them and in and out of every single house. The problem with making 1 eruv is if one person forgets, let's say over here, then that'll cause a problem to everybody else as well. So for that reason, they may, or maybe they just don't like each other, they may want to make only 1 eruv for themselves and another eruv here. So if it's less than 10, they can do that. If this opening is more than 10 amot, then it's too big to be considered an opening of a wall. It's just like there's no wall there, and in that case, it's all 1 big courtyard. Okay, that's the Mishnah. All right, so the Gemara is going to be discussing a series of variations on these cases. What if we said if it's a thick wall, it becomes its own domain? What if it's not a thick wall? En bo arba'a mai, the thickness of the wall is less than 4 tefachim. Amar Rav, avir shete reshuyot sholetet bo, lo yaziz bo, afilu melo nima. So back to this picture. If this is thin, then it's not considered its own area, and therefore it's part of the domain of this courtyard and part of this domain of this courtyard. In other words, it's kind of an overlap, and so therefore these people cannot uh, put anything up or take anything down there because it belongs to those people, and the same the other way around. And so that becomes really worse off. You can't even move anything, so it's actually even worse. You can't even go up there and eat the fruit. If it's its own domain, I'm allowed to go into another domain, and while I'm in that domain, I can move things around. But in this case, because it belongs to the other guy's domain, I'm not allowed to even move anything. And the other guy can't even move anything because it belongs to my domain. And so both of them, sholetet behem, both control it. And so neither can do anything. So usually even in a reshut harabim, you can move it something for amot. In this case, you're just stuck because it's that in that overlap. That's the opinion of Rav. However, Rabbi Yochanan is mekel. Rabbi Yochanan amar elu me'alin mikan ve'ochelin ve'elu ma'alin mikan ve'ochelin. He goes to the opposite extreme and says people on this side they can even bring fruit up onto the wall and eat it there, and the other side they can also bring things onto the wall and they can eat it there. Why? He's considering it as makom patur, right? Not that it's overlapping, that we both have control over it and then there's a tug of war, but rather a makom patur is like a fire hydrant, right? A little pole in the middle of the Reshut Harabim is too small to be anything, and therefore it's no man's land. And that generally in the case like that, each person is allowed to put things there, take things back. So that is Rabbi Yochanan's opinion. So that's really quite an interesting thing, that if it's 4 tefachim wide, then it's considered its own reshut, and you can move things on it, but not move things to it. Whereas if it's shorter, then you have both extremes. Either you can't do anything at all, or you can put things there also. Okay, now we're going to bring a challenge to Rabbi Yochanan, Tenan, from our Mishnah. Tenan, elu olin mikan ve'ochelin. Elu olin mikan ve'ochelin. Olin in, ma'alin la. Our Mishnah says that you can, both sides can walk up and eat fruit on top. They can eat fruit on top, but they can't bring things, right? Olin ve'ochlin, but not ma'alin. They can't bring things up. So how, Rabbi Yochanan, how could you say that you're allowed to bring fruit up? So the answer is quite simple. Hachika amar yesh bo arba'a al arba'a olin in ma'alin la. And bo arba'a al arba'a ma'alin name. The Mishnah was talking about a case where it is four tefachim thick. It says that in the Mishnah, it's 4 tefachim thick, right? For rochab arba'a. So that's why it said that. But if it's less, then I can also carry up there. So he was able to, is no problem resolving Rabbi Yochanan with the Mishnah. And in fact, we have now a support. Rabbi Yochanan leta'ameh dechi ata Rav Dimi amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rav Dimi, one of the Nechuta'eh, when he came from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel, he reported in the name of Rabbi Yochanan a halacha that we've seen a number of times before. מקום שאין בו ארבעה על ארבעה, מותר לבני רשות הרבים ובני רשות היחיד לחטף עליו, ובלבד שלא יחליפו. So, for example, if we had, let's say this wall was was a thin wall, less than 4 tefachim, and this is a shut harabim. So if someone's carrying a backpack in the shut harabim and needs to rest for a minute and readjust his load, so he can rest it on this makom patur, and then can continue on his way. And so too, someone inside who's carrying something and he wants to rest it on here and adjust his load, he can also do the same thing. What they can't do is this guy who's in this domain rested on here, then leave it, and then someone else come from here and take it in. Right? You can't. You can't use. It has to be. You have to use it. You can't use it as a transfer point from outside to in, but either one can rest something on it. That is Rabbi Yochanan's halacha, and therefore you see this would be the same thing. These people can bring some fruit or whatever they want. They can put it up there. It's a nice resting place for their fruit, and they can eat it there also. What they can't do is this guy bring an apple, put it up there, and then someone from here go and take the apple, right, and bring it to their house. You cannot transfer from one to the other. Okay, so that's Rabbi Yochanan's halacha. Now we wonder about Rav. Rav was machmir on this thin case. But Rav did Rav dimi? Does Rav disagree with this halacha that a makom patur you're allowed to put things on top of? He says, well, if it was deoraita, then indeed, in other words, if it's reshut harabim deoraita and the reshut hayachid deoraita, and you have a makom patur in the middle, then yes, then you can do that because people are going to be careful not to make sure not to transfer. If I know I put this thing on from my reshut hayachid onto this, I'm going to be careful because if I do transfer to the reshut harabim, I'm going to violate a deoraita. So therefore, you're allowed. Each side is allowed to use it for their own purpose. But our case is where the other side is a shut harabim midrabanan, and in that case, people might be lax. And they'll say, okay, I'll put it on here on this side, and then someone else will come and take it from that side and say, it's just a rabbanan. I put it on this middle no man's land, so it should be okay. Therefore, sometimes the Chamim have to make the rabbinic decree even more stringent than a doraita, because everybody's going to be careful for a doraita, but they may not be careful for a rabbanan. So this is an important principle. You don't apply it all the time, but sometimes we do. Okay, so therefore Rav does in principle agree that a makom patur is such a thing, but in this case, he does not apply it because it would be deoraita. I guess two reshut hayachids in this case because they're both courtyards, but they're both reshut hayachid deoraita. Okay, Amar Rabba, Amar Rav Huna, Amar Rav Nachman. Okay, this is a halacha name of Rav Nachman. We're going to see two of them. כותל שבין שתי חסרות, צידו אחד גבוה 10 טפחים, וצידו אחד שווה לארץ. נותנים אותו לזה ששווה לארץ. So now we have like theory of relativity. You have two courtyards. I'll get the better picture here. Okay, two courtyards, and you have a wall. The wall is 10 tefachim high for these people, right? Because this area is lower. But this the area it's on a hill, so the land is not even. And for these people, the wall is less than 10 tefachim, right? So now you have a dilemma because all right, this is a separation for these people, but not for these people. So the question is, this thickness of the wall, to whom does it belong? So the answer is נותנים אותו לזה ששווה לארץ, משום תאווה לזה תשמישו בנחת ולזה תשמישו בקשה, וכל לזה בנחת ולזה בקשה נותנים אותו לזה שתשמישו בנחת. So in this case we give it to the one for whom it's shorter, because it's easy for him to go and put things on there and use it because it's low down. Whereas this guy is going to have to reach up all the way up here, so it's more difficult for him to use it. Therefore, the thickness of the wall belongs to these people, and they could put things on, take things off, make it an extension of their own, and these people cannot use it at all. All right, good. That's one case of Rav Nachman, and now we have a similar case, except in concave way. Amar Rav Shizbi, Amar Rav Nachman again. Haritz sheben shete chaserot. Sido echad amok 10, vesido echad shave laaretz. נותנים אותו לזה ששווה לארץ, משום תבלה לזה תשמישו בנחת, ולזה תשמישו בקשה. So, if we have not a wall, but rather a ditch, right? A wall can also work if it goes down, right? Like if you have a pit that's 10 tefachim deep, that also is a reshut hayachid, because you can put schach on top and sit inside the pit, because walls can also don't have to go up, walls can also go down. In both of these cases, these walls work to separate but these as two domains, right? If you have a straight wall, then they would make two Eruvin. Rav Nachman's question is only who can use the area, the space, right? So in this case, the wall is in effect the depressed part. And so down here, who can put things put things in here and who cannot? So in this case, it's the opposite. For these people that are higher up, to put something all the way down there is very difficult to get to. Whereas for these people, I mean, it could even be straight. Over here, in this picture, they make it like it's a little bit of a ditch. For these people, they can take a pot or whatever and put it in here. It's easier for them to access, and therefore they can treat it as an extension of there to shoot and put things and take things. And these guys up here cannot use it at all. Okay, good. Now we have both of these halachot. Why do we need both of them? They're basically the same principle. Whoever has easiest use for that space, it belongs to them. Why do you need to tell me both cases? מעינן כותל משום בגובהה משתמש ינשה, אבל חריס בעומקה למשתה ינשה, אמלה. I might think that this only applies to a wall. People generally use walls. They like to put things up there, keep it away from animals and things. But ditches, people less often will use ditches at all. So I might think a ditch doesn't belong to anyone. And so that's why I have to tell me the law of the ditch. On the other hand, a wall, when I put something on top of a wall, I'm always afraid it might fall off, some wind might come, something might come and take it. Whereas when it's in a ditch, then I don't worry about it because it's in a nice, safe spot and is not going to fall. So I might think it only applies to the ditch and not the wall. And so therefore, he has to tell me the case. Rabbi Nachman had to teach the case in both. Truth is, we don't know historically if Rabbi Nachman said both because there's two different students of Rav Nachman. Maybe Rav Nachman taught a principle and there's two different students that are then applying the principle to two different cases, right? Or it's a pedagogic style. You want to show the students how it applies in many different cases. Maybe he did. But the fact is that now in the tradition, both of these applications were memorized and put into the curriculum. So you have to wonder, why do we need to learn both of them? Well, truth is we can learn yet further principles by comparing them and seeing how they're different and why you might think it applies here and not there. And that exercise will help us apply it to yet further other cases that aren't mentioned here at all. Okay, good. All right. Now, until the next end of the daf, we're going to try to figure out ways where if you do have a wall and you still want to make one eruv between them, what are some ways that you can bring the wall down or make an opening? Obviously, you can go take a hammer and make an opening, make a window or something, but an easier way, right? Short of that, what are some ways that you can make it as if it's one courtyard and somehow overcome the height of the wall? So there are many different ways to do it, and here's probably the easiest. אם יש במיעוטו 4, מותר להשתמש בכל הכותל כולו, ואם לאו, אין משתמש אלא כנגד המיעוט. Okay, so one easy way is you take an item, maybe just a pile of dirt, a box, right, a pot, and you put it next to the wall, and then you can climb up on that. And so since if it's something that's nice and easy to climb up on, then the wall is considered shorter, right? So simple enough. Okay, and so if you do this, if that section is 4 tefachim wide, whatever you're putting, the platform that you're putting there, then you can not only can you go over it, but you can even use the entire top of the wall. Why? Because it's kind of similar to this case where for you the wall is shorter. So once you put this up, and now it's easy to access the top of the wall. Now, once you can get to the top of the wall, so then you can carry along the entire wall. Yeah. Okay, so.
But it has to be 4 hand breadths. wide.
But it has to be 400 breaths wide so that it is a platform that's easy to use. If it's just if you're just stepping on a little pebble, a little rock, then that's you're not getting there easily, because it has to be a nice, imagine if it was a nice ramp or a staircase, or even just a platform, but something that you can stand on with confidence. Then that gives you access and rights to the entire wall. Okay,
You
now we
have to
wonder
make.
about, yeah.
Does that have to make that the wall on your end is less than 10 tefachim at that point?
Right, and that's exactly the point. And on your end, it's less than 10 tefachim.
Like if I have a 10-foot wall, a small step is not going to get me there.
No, right, has to get it up. Yeah, if you have a 10-foot wall, then you got to make a series of platforms or a staircase. We're going to talk about ladders in a second.
Didn't we
And
talk
then
about ladders earlier?
we did have we had ladders in the previous Mishnah that was between two floors of a building, and this is now we had a while ago we had ladders over
Going
two
both
sides of the wall. We're going to bring that back. Yeah. Okay, good. Now we just have a question on this. So what does that mean? If this thing is wide, let me see if there's a better picture. Not quite. Okay, if this item is wide, then it's sorry, if it's not wide, right? If it's small, if it's just a 2 tefachim, 3 tefachim thing, then why should it be allowed at all? Why should it even let you carry in that small area of the wall? And right, so if it is 4, then you should be able to carry. No, this one. If it helps at all, then it should help to carry along the whole wall. If it doesn't help at all, then it shouldn't be able to carry even in that small section, right? So the problem is, I understand if it's 4 big and it's easy to carry, then I can carry it on the whole wall. If it's less than 4, you told me, then I can. It only applies to that small bit of wall. And the point is, what's the point of the small bit of wall? Why are you saying it works there but not for the whole wall? Either it works for the whole wall or it works for nothing. Okay, that's the question. And the answer is Shakar Chulyam Erosha. Well, I was talking about a case where I made a notch in the top of the wall, and so I have a small 3 tefach notch, and I put a little stool here that's short, and in that case I can go on the stool and I can use that space and put things on top. But that's why I can't use the whole wall. Okay. Amar Rav Yechiel Kafas Sefel Mema'et. So if I take not something that's going to be permanent, but just a basin, and I put it upside down, and that also works. Okay, that's what Rav Yechiel said, right? That you don't have to build a permanent structure there. You could just take a pot and step on the pot. Now we're going to have a series of questions on that. A pot is something that you can take on Shabbat. Right? All of a sudden Shabbat, you say, "Oh, I need a pot. I wanna use it." Oh, go out there and take it from the wall. And then it's a temporary structure, and so that should not be allowed. So in order to resolve this, we say must be a case where you attached it to the ground, and so it's that's why it's difficult to remove. Has to be that case. But if you just stuck it on top of the ground, no, it wouldn't be good. Wait a second, that doesn't help. If you have some unripe figs and you bury it in straw, because you want it to stay there so that it will ripen, and the straw is meant for kindling, so the straw is mukseh, and you put the figs in there. But you're allowed to take the figs out on Shabbat because you're just grabbing the fig on top, and even though the straw will move, you're not moving the straw directly. Or similarly, if I have a cake and I bury it in coals, I want it to stay warm. That's fine. I'm not allowed to move the coals by hand because that's mukseh, but I can move the cake and the coals will just fall on their own. And all that is allowed. So too with the pot. So what? So I can put the pot and I can attach it into the ground, but I will still be able to remove it if I want the pot, and the dirt will just fall off on its own. So it's still too temporary. So we need a new answer. Hacha b'ma'askenan de'it le'ognaim. We're talking about a pot that has a rim and like this. See, and the rim is below the dirt. And now when I pick up the pot, the dirt is not falling off. I'm actually moving the dirt also. It remains on the pot. And so that would make it more permanent and not wouldn't be allowed to take this pot out. And so that's talking about that case, and that's why it's okay because it's permanent. Wait, even that doesn't resolve it. בזמן שמקצת עלין מגולין אינו חושש לא משום כליים ולא משום מעשר ולא משום שביעית וניטלין בשבת. This will bring us back to Masechet Shabbat and Mukseh. If someone takes a turnip or radish and you put it back into the ground, you plucked it already, it's not attached to the ground, but for safekeeping, I bury it back in the ground and only its leaves are above ground. So in such a case, it's not considered attached to the ground for various halachot. For kilayim, if I put it in a vineyard, I'm not allowed to plant vegetables and in the vineyard together because that's mixing different species. But that's okay because it's not actually planted in the ground. It's just buried in the ground. It doesn't take root. And also maaser, even if while it's under there, somehow maybe grows bigger naturally, I don't have to give more maaser, a tenth of it. And it's okay during Shivi'it year, even though I'm not allowed to plant things during Shivi'it, I can bury vegetables in the ground. And also, the last thing is I can remove it on Shabbat. And in this case, the whole thing is under the ground except for the leaves. And so certainly here, when I remove this turnip or something, it's going to be moving the dirt directly. And so therefore, in the case of a pot also, I don't have to worry about the rim. Even though the whole thing's under the ground, I'm allowed to take it out. And so therefore, this too is too temporary and cannot be used as a basis platform for Shabbat. And the last answer is I bury it, I stick it in the ground so good that I would need a shovel or a spade in order to remove it. And obviously, you're not allowed to use those kinds of tools on Shabbat. And so the case of a pot is only when I bury it so well that it will be impossible to remove on Shabbat. Okay, so is it really likely that Rabbi, who said this to begin with, Rabbi Yechiel, when he gave the example of a basin, did he really have in mind that it has to be buried in there so well, like chained down, that you need a shovel to take it out? Probably not. And the truth is that if you compare this in the Yerushalmi, it looks like this opinion that has to be something, the Vani Taba Shabbat, has to be permanent, is only one opinion. And there are others that say, no, even something temporary can be used as a platform. And so I think that Rabbi Yechiel would not agree with the halacha that it has to be something that's permanently there on Shabbat. And that's why he said a basin is okay. But the Bavli wants to harmonize this and make all the opinions fit together. And so therefore, they say even Rabbi Yechiel's example of a pot can fit with this halacha that it has to be a permanent item as long as the pot is placed very firmly in the ground, so firmly that you need a shovel. All right, and now finally we get to the ladders. Sulam hamitzri, an Egyptian ladder, which means a small, this is what we would call like a step stool. Eno mema'et, not good enough. Basori mema'et, but a Tyrian ladder, those are larger, taller ladders, that works. Okay, that's a braita. Now, let's analyze. What does that mean, a Egyptian step stool? It's a ladder that has less than 3 rungs. Like this, okay? That's just a little thing. So this is not big enough, even though if you did climb up it, it would be less than 10 tefachim. It's kind of not easy. This is like trying to get out of a swimming pool in the deep end. Those little ladders. You still need a lot of effort to push yourself and climb over the wall. So this is this is not convenient enough. So just like before, if it's a platform, it has to be 4 tefachim, so you can put both feet on it and be able to access up here. This is going to be too flimsy, and so not good enough to consider the wall reduced. Gimel actually gives a different reason than I just gave. Okay, forget the reason I just said. I made it up. What is the reason that this Egyptian step stool is not good? Amar Rav. משום לדבר שניטל בשבת, וכל דבר שניטל בשבת אינו ממעט. The reason why the Egyptian step stool is no good is because it's too small and it's easy to remove. So anyone can just come and move it around to a different place. So therefore, it's a temporary thing. And the Rav said, anything that can be moved easily on Shabbat is not considered enough of a platform to move things. This is the halacha of Rav. This is actually the main place it is. We quoted it up above. But I said before, not even all the students of Rav quote him saying this. So I think Rav Yechiel before would not actually agree to this halacha. Not that he's arguing with Rav, but Rav himself had two different traditions about what he said. Okay, but anyway, if we apply it to step stools, step stool is no good because it's too small and easily moved. Okay, hachi afilu sorinami hatam kobdo kobo. Wait, so if so, it's easily moved, then how about the big one? How come this one is okay? This is also movable, right? It's not nailed to the wall. Well, this one is very heavy. I mean, we have tall ladders made out of aluminum, so one person can carry it. But imagine made out of wood, this would be quite heavy. You'd need a couple of people to carry it, and so therefore, this is permanent enough that it can be considered a permanent structure, and that makes it accessible. So the wall is like, it's not there, right? Because a wall is only a wall because it prevents people from going back and forth. But this, everybody can go up, they can go over here, come back down the other side. So it's actually more like an opening than a wall. And since it's hard to move, it's like permanent. Okay, good. Amar Abaye kotel שבין שתי חסרות גבוה 10 טפחים, והניח סולם רחב 4 מכאן, וסולם רחב 4 מכאן, ואין בין זה לזה 3 טפחים, ממעט. 3 אינו ממעט. So when we have a ladder, if the ladder itself is 4 tefachim wide, right? So a nice ladder or staircase that's easy to use, and then there's another ladder on the other side that's also the same, and between the two ladders is less than 3 tefachim. So that's lavud. It's like there's nothing there. In that case, the ladders and the small space and the other ladder all combine to make it all open. And therefore you could make one eruv across both of them. And so mima'et, it makes it as if the wall is lower, and then also you could use the wall as another a part of this, right? The wall, even though it's high up, I can go and put fruit on the wall. I can bring fruit down. It's all considered. It's as if it's flat. It's like a low wall, and everybody can use it.
We're saying though that if I have to walk along the wall more than 3 tefahim to get to the second ladder, then it's not considered mimait anymore, right?
That's correct. If the wall is thin, or as we're going to say in a second, if the wall is thin, I can go up here, but I can't walk across the wall because it's thin, right? Then being able to come down, that's no good. I'm going to fall off the wall by the time I get there. It's like having half an opening. It's like I have a half window here and a half window on the other side. The window only goes into half the wall, and another side, a window only goes half the wall. It doesn't go through. So it doesn't help you.
What's the thickness of the wall?
Right. Imagine if it didn't go through the thickness of the wall. So this gets me up, but I have no way to get down. So if it's less than 3 tefachim, then it's like all one pathway. But farther away, there's no pathway to get from this ladder to that ladder.
But we never required something on the other side for the large rock that was wider than 4 tefahim.
Right. Okay, that's a good point. So what we're about to say is that if the wall is thick, then you'd be right. If the wall is thick, then even if the other ladder is far away, it's okay. And I think you'd be right that having only one ladder, then I can use, and the wall is thick, then that gives me access to the entire wall. It's just that if those people also want to use the wall, then they would need access. If I do have ladders on both, then it's considered one courtyard, and I can make it one eruv. Right. So there's a number of applications within this about making eruv and about each side using it.
How thick does the wall have to be? I think I missed that.
4 tefachim.
Thick.
Yeah.
Okay.
4 tefachim. Yeah, the thickness of the wall.
Okay.
Right? Velo amaran, here's what he say here. Ela delahave kotel arba'ah. This halacha that we said before, that you need the ladders to be close to each other, is only when it's there doesn't have 4 tefachim. Abal have kotel arba'ah. But if it's a thick wall, afilu muflag tuba, even if the ladders are far away, it's okay. I can walk on top, and then that becomes its own reshut, and I can walk along the top of the wall and go down on the other side, and that makes it a passageway. All right, good. Now I'm almost done. A similar case, instead of a ladder, something that's more like steps. Amara bevai bar abaye, bana itzteba. Itzteba is like a wooden platform that it's not a piece of furniture that goes all the way down enclosed, but rather either sticks out of the wall like this, right? It's like a shelf, a built-in shelf. And so the problem here is that because it doesn't go all the way down to the floor, right? So we just need a couple of more requirements. This is another way to think of it. Isteba al gabe isteba. You made a number of these platforms, one on top of the other. As long as the bottom one is 4 tefachim wide, and I can go on there, and then the rest of the wall is accessible, is less than 10 tefachim from here, then it reduces it. In other words, a basin or that I put on the floor, that's definitely going to be good, right? But even this, even though there's nothing underneath, it's okay. That also works if it's 4 tefachim wide. Or iname en batachtona arba'a veyesh be'elyona arba'a ve'en ben ze laze shelosha mema'et. Or even if the bottom one is small, but the top one is 4 tefachim wide, as long as between them there is less than 3 tefachim, so that's lavud, right? So you can see it better in this case. Let's say this is a very small step, so that by itself doesn't count. And this by itself is no good because this itself is too high. But if this is 4 tefachim and I can access that with steps that are less than 3 tefachim each, then we can make this all into one piece of furniture and the whole thing is good. It's basically like a ladder. See, the benefit of a ladder is that it's all connected. It's one thing, and so nice. It's easy to use. This is made out of separate platforms, but as long as they're close to each other, they can all join together.
When it says zela zeb in ben zela ze shelosha, does that mean the first one and the first step and the top step, or does that mean specifically between each step?
Between each step, right? Kind of like the lavud strings for the sukkah. Each one connects to the next one, then it's okay. Good. I remember I was designing a staircase in my house, and so there was a lot of discussion about how high each tread should be for optimal staircase climbing. Okay, Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rabba bar Abu, Sulam sheshelivotav porchot im yesh b'shtiva tachtona arba'a ממעט. הנה אין בשליבה תחתונה 4 ויש בשליבה העליונה 4 ואין בין זה לזה 3 ממעט. Basically the same thing with a ladder, but this rungs are not connected. I don't know how you have something with disconnected rungs. Well, this is more like the isteba. Okay. So something like this, where so the bottom one is smaller than 3 tefachim, right? If the bottom one is bigger than 4 tefachim, then that's fine. That is a platform by itself, and then that will reduce the height of the wall. If the bottom one is less, then as long as it's less than 3 tefachim between each step, it's the same thing. So rather than being separate platforms, this is a ladder shape, but it's basically the same halacha. And that's all for today. Baruch Adonai L'olam. Amen ve'amen. Shabbat.